I mean, yeah, California's expensive, but I mean, as long as I got $100 left.
It's so expensive to live in California. The taxes are so high. And guess what? You'd have to drag my body out of here kicking and screaming before I'd ever go anywhere else. That's right. It's expensive because it's worth it.
If California were an independent country, its economy would rank 4th in the world, just behind the 3 largest powers on the planet. This is the birthplace of companies that have changed the world, such as Apple, Google, Nvidia, and Hollywood, the cradle of the global entertainment industry. However, this very place is also famous for its high housing prices, high taxes, homelessness, traffic jams, and a series of never-ending political controversies. The strange thing is that despite everything, millions of people continue to move to California each year in search of a better life. Why? What do they see that those who only read the news do not? California is the land of ultimate opportunity, or is it a place where success comes at too high a price? In the next 20 minutes, we will peel back the layers of this special state to uncover the real life behind the glamour and the reasons why California continues to evoke both admiration and controversy across the United States. When mentioning California, most people will immediately think of Hollywood, sunny beaches, or Silicon Valley. But that's just a very small slice of the picture. In reality, California doesn't resemble a state in the way we usually imagine. It resembles a smaller country. With an area of nearly 424,000 square kilometers, California is larger than many countries in the world. A population of nearly 40 million people, equivalent to a mid-sized country in Europe. And the most astonishing thing is, if California were to become an independent country, its economy would rank 4th in the world, only behind the United States, China, and Germany, surpassing even powerhouses like Japan and the UK. Just that number alone is enough to make people look at California in a completely different light. But the scale is just the beginning. What makes California special is the feeling that you are passing through many different worlds without ever leaving the state. In the morning, you can stand on the Pacific beach and watch the first waves of the day. Just a few hours' drive later, you find yourself in the snow-covered Sierra Nevada mountain range in winter. Drive a little further, and the scenery transforms into the arid Mojave Desert with its strange Joshua trees, then continues to change into the redwood forests, where the towering trunks make humans look like tiny dots in nature. The surprising point is that not many people realize California is one of the very few places in the world where you can go from the beach, up to the snowy mountains, and down to the desert all in the same day. It's not just the geographical diversity, but also the diversity in the ways people choose to live. That contrast becomes even clearer when looking at the economy. This is where Hollywood tells stories to the whole world. Silicon Valley writes the future of technology, and the Central Valley quietly provides a significant portion of fruits, vegetables, and nuts for America. Coexisting in one state are trillion-dollar corporations and peaceful agricultural towns, where the rhythm of life still revolves around the seasons. California is both a hub of artificial intelligence and a land of vineyards, dairy farms, and rural roads that seem completely unrelated to the tech world. It is this blend that leads many to jokingly say, if America were a movie, California would be an entire series with multiple seasons in every genre imaginable. And perhaps this is also the reason why California is always controversial. Each person only sees a part of it and then hastily concludes about the whole. Those who have been to Beverly Hills will speak of its opulence. Those who have visited Skid Row will talk about the homelessness crisis. People working in Silicon Valley see opportunity, while those struggling with rent see pressure. All of it is true, but no one has seen the whole picture yet. If you're also curious to know whether California is truly a paradise, or just a huge paradox of America, hit like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this. Because the biggest surprises are still ahead. After all those impressive numbers, one big question remains unanswered. If California is so wonderful, why is this very place the most complained about in the United States? The answer to that paradox will take us to the next part of the journey. There is a very interesting paradox about California. If you only read the news, you might think this is a place where people are trying to leave. But if you look at the reality, you will see a much more complex picture. Every year, millions of people still move away from, or return to California for work, study, and opportunities. That raises a very thought-provoking question. If this place is really as bad as many people describe, why are so many still willing to make sacrifices to live here? Perhaps because California has never sold a promise of an easy life. What it sells is a feeling that here you can become a better version of yourself. The first thing that makes many people love California is not Hollywood or the billion-dollar tech companies, but the cheapest thing here, the weather. People often joke that they don't need to check the weather forecast as much as those in other states, because most of the time, the sky is still blue and the sun is still shining. Someone once wrote that after moving to California, they almost forgot the feeling of having to ask each other, "How's the weather today?" It may seem trivial, but when you can walk, bike, jog, or sit outside almost year-round, the quality of life changes in very subtle ways. It's a kind of luxury that money can't easily buy. But the weather is just the first layer. What keeps people there longer is the feeling that every interest has a place. A Los Angeles resident once described their life with a very interesting sentence. In the morning, I can surf. In the afternoon, drive up the mountains. In the evening, watch a concert. And on the weekend, try a restaurant from a cuisine I had never heard of before. Sounds like a travel advertisement, but for many Californians, that's just a typical weekend itinerary. The surprising thing is that California not only has a lot to do, but there are so many choices that sometimes deciding what to do is the hardest part. And then there's an often overlooked factor that appears frequently in the local shares: diversity. In California, you can hear dozens of languages in one market, have breakfast with Mexican food, lunch with sushi, and dinner with Italian or Vietnamese cuisine without having to drive too far. It's no coincidence that many people call California a microcosm of the world. For those who grew up in small towns with a fairly homogeneous culture, the feeling of being exposed to many different communities makes life much richer. This is not just a place where people come to work, but also a place where they learn to live with differences. However, perhaps California's greatest allure lies in the most intangible thing: opportunity. Not everyone who moves here wants to become an actor or a tech billionaire. Some people just want to open a small cafe, become a chef, design video games, conduct scientific research, or start a business with a still vague idea. The appealing thing about California is that you always feel like you're closer to the people who can help turn that idea into reality. That is the power of the network, of the creative environment, and of the belief that if there is a place worth trying, it is probably here. If you also find these lesser-told perspectives interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to join us on the next exploration journey. But it is precisely here that the greatest paradox begins to emerge. California offers an ideal climate, abundant opportunities, and a quality of life that many people desire. However, all of that comes with a very specific price. And perhaps this is the question that keeps millions of people awake every month. If California is so livable, why do more and more people with good jobs still feel they can't afford to live comfortably? That will be the story of the next part. If in the previous part, I explained why millions of people still want to come to California, so now it's time for us to talk about the reasons why quite a few people, after a few years, start to wonder, can I stay here long term? And do you know what the most interesting thing is? The answer does not lie in Hollywood, nor does it completely lie in the political debates that often appear on television. According to the experiences of many residents and surveys on quality of life, the biggest issue can be summed up in one word: affordability. Or, to put it simply, it's not about how much money you make, but how much you have left after paying all the bills. And that's where the California dream starts to collide with reality. Let's start with housing. Many people move to California with a good job, a salary that in other states could be considered quite decent. But just a few months later, they realize that their biggest rival is not their colleagues, but the rent. In many coastal areas and major urban centers, even a regular apartment has rental prices that make newcomers have to calculate every expense. If you want to buy a house, the numbers are even more staggering. There are areas where a single-family home priced from hundreds of thousands to over $1 million is not uncommon. The surprising point is that many people with full-time jobs and stable incomes still have to postpone their plans to buy a house for many years. The dream of owning a home hasn't disappeared, but it is becoming more and more distant. But housing is just the first bill. Then there are gas money, insurance, electricity, groceries, and various other taxes. California is famous for having some of the highest taxes and living costs in the United States. Many people even joke that there is an invisible surcharge here, often humorously referred to as the California Premium. Want to live near the sea? You pay extra. Want to live near your workplace? You pay extra. Want to avoid driving too far every day? You still have to pay extra. That doesn't mean California is intentionally becoming expensive, but when too many people want to live in one place, all resources come under pressure. The law of supply and demand quietly does the rest. Then there's traffic, an experience that almost anyone who has lived in California can tell their own story about. People often say in Los Angeles, distance is not measured in kilometers, but in minutes of traffic. A distance of just over 20 kilometers can sometimes take more than an hour to complete during rush hour. It may sound funny, but if it happens every day, you'll understand why many people feel they are trading their living time for career opportunities. And time, after all, is also a type of cost that no one can get back. That is also the reason why California often becomes the focal point of debates across the United States. California lovers will say that all of those things are worth it for the climate, opportunities, and quality of life. Others believe that the price has exceeded acceptable limits. Interestingly, both perspectives are valid when viewed from each person's circumstances. If you have also lived in a place where costs rise faster than income, please share your experience in the comments. I would really like to know if you would choose opportunity or stability if you had to make a trade-off. But this is the biggest twist in the story. Many people believe that California's problems are evidence of failure. However, there is also a completely opposite argument. What if those very problems are the result of too many people wanting to live here? If that's the case, California is not necessarily failing, maybe it is just paying the price of its own success, and that will be the question we explore together in the next part. At this point, many people might quickly conclude, housing prices are too high, traffic is congested, the cost of living is expensive, homelessness remains a challenge. So California is clearly failing, right? But let's try to look at the story from another angle. In economics, there is an interesting paradox. Sometimes the most attractive places are also the ones with the most problems. Not because they operate poorly, but because too many people want to be there. Imagine a small restaurant suddenly becoming famous throughout the city. The first thing that usually happens is not a decrease in quality, but longer lines, higher prices, and more difficulty in making reservations. California, in a way, is also facing that very paradox. Let's look at the housing market. For decades, California has continuously attracted those seeking opportunity, from tech engineers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, and researchers to those simply wanting to trade a frigid winter for a sunny sky. Demand has outpaced supply for many years, causing real estate prices to soar. As technology hubs thrive, many high-income workers also flock here, leading to increased demand for housing, services, and infrastructure. The point worth pondering is that it's not California becoming expensive that brought many people here, but rather because so many people want to come, everything has become increasingly expensive. This is a reversal that not everyone notices when looking at the numbers. The same thing happens with traffic. Many people see the congested highways as a symbol of overpopulation. That's true, but it also reflects another reality. Every day, millions of people are moving between job centers, universities, hospitals, film studios, laboratories, and the world's largest tech companies. The more opportunities a city creates, the more people it attracts, and the more people there are, the greater the pressure on the infrastructure. In other words, traffic jams are sometimes not just a sign of a system under pressure, but also a sign of an economy that is always moving at a very high intensity. Another factor that has changed California in recent years is the boom in technology and the trend of flexible working. When high value-added industries thrive, the income of a segment of the workforce increases faster than the average. That creates many opportunities, but it also unintentionally makes the gap in affordability increasingly apparent. Many longtime residents feel pressured as housing prices and living costs rise faster than their income growth. This is not a problem faced only by California, but in a state with a large economy and strong appeal like California, every fluctuation is more pronounced. Perhaps the most controversial thing is not that California has achieved too much success, but that those achievements have not been felt equally by everyone. And precisely because of that, California always divides America into two viewpoints. One side sees the costs, pressures, and problems that need to be solved. The other side sees opportunity, creativity, and an allure that has never faded. Perhaps both are looking at the same picture, but from two different angles. If you find this analysis brings a new perspective, take a moment to hit like and subscribe, because the most exciting part of the story is still ahead. Because after all the debates about housing prices or traffic, there is still a much bigger question. Why does a state that is constantly criticized still give birth to companies that are changing the world, from the internet, smartphones, to artificial intelligence? Perhaps California's greatest secret lies not in what people are complaining about, but in what it continues to quietly create for the whole world. And that will be the journey we explore in the next part. If we stop the story at housing prices, taxes, or traffic jams, we will only see half of California. The other half is what draws the world's attention. Try to think about a normal day of yours. You open your phone, search for information on the internet, watch videos online, use maps to navigate, chat with artificial intelligence, and then end the day with a movie or your favorite music. It may sound very ordinary, but behind many of those familiar experiences, there is the mark of California. This is not just a place where people live, but also a place where many future ideas are born before spreading across the world. Let's start with Silicon Valley, often likened to the laboratory of the 21st century. From small garages and university campuses, companies like Apple, Google, Nvidia, and a host of other tech businesses have changed the way people work, communicate, and innovate. Universities like Stanford and Berkeley do not just educate students, they continuously produce scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs who open entirely new industries. The astonishing point is that in a relatively small area of California, the highest concentration of innovation in the world is found, where an idea can become a billion-dollar business in just a few years. That is what continues to attract many people here, despite all the difficulties we just mentioned in the previous section. But California is not just about technology. This is also where Hollywood tells stories that shape the imagination of billions. Disney, major film studios, and the entertainment industry have turned California into the center of America's soft power. At the same time, the aerospace, biotechnology, clean energy, and venture capital industries have also developed strongly, creating an ecosystem that very few places in the world can replicate. Interestingly, California does not just export phones, software, or movies. It exports ideas as well. Ideas about how we learn, work, entertain ourselves, and even how we envision the future. That is also why many experts call California the experimental engine of America. A new technology is often developed here first, a new business model also often emerges here first. Even debates about artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, or renewable energy often start in California before spreading to the rest of the country. Some have likened this state to a telescope looking into the future. Look at California today, and sometimes you will see America 10 years from now. If you also enjoy stories that show the journey of innovation behind the numbers, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. That not only helps the channel grow, but also allows us to continue producing in-depth analysis videos like this. But this is the biggest paradox. The very place that created the internet, AI, Hollywood, and countless new industries is also facing the toughest challenges regarding housing, the wealth gap, and social change. Is it possible that California is not only creating the future of America, but also facing the challenges of the future earlier than the rest of the country? The answer to that paradox will lead us to the final and most thought-provoking part of the entire story. At this point, perhaps the biggest question is no longer, is California worth living in? But rather, is California showing us the future of America? Because if we look back at history, California has rarely been just a state following trend. It is often where trends begin. The gold rush once expanded the borders of the United States westward. Hollywood shapes global popular culture. Silicon Valley ushered in the internet era. And today, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, clean energy, and the creative economy are also being tested here for the first time. A point worth pondering is that California often leads not only in success, but also in the challenges that come with success. Let's look at the bigger picture. As technology advances faster, the gap between those with the right skills and those who are falling behind becomes more apparent. As climate change becomes an unavoidable topic, states with large economies like California are often the first to adapt to wildfires, droughts, or new energy policies. What makes California special is not that it has more problems than elsewhere, but because many of the 21st century issues appear here earlier. It's like a giant laboratory where both successes and difficulties are seen in advance. That's also why California always evokes two contrasting emotions. For some, it is a warning about the cost of living, the wealth gap, and the pressures of urbanization. For others, it is proof that innovation always comes with change, and change has never been an easy process. Those two perspectives are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they can both be true at the same time. A state can both create world-changing technologies and struggle to address the social consequences brought about by that very pace of development. That is not just California's paradox. That could be the paradox that many developed economies will have to face in the future. There is a very memorable saying: if you want to know what tomorrow will be like, look at where today is happening the fastest. In many fields, California is indeed such a place. The debates about AI, jobs, housing, energy, immigration, or affordability are no longer the story of just one state. They are gradually becoming common questions for all of America and even for many other countries. If you also believe that local stories sometimes reflect global trends, please like and subscribe so we can continue to decode the changes shaping the world together. And perhaps, after more than 20 minutes, the answer no longer lies in whether California is a paradise or a warning. Perhaps California is both. It shows how creative a society can be, while also reminding us that every major advancement comes with new problems to solve. So, the final question I want to leave you with is, if America in the next 10 or 20 years resembles California today, do you think that would be a desirable scenario or a challenge that society needs to prepare for now? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Who knows? That discussion might just be a part of the story about the future that we have just explored together. California may be the most controversial state in America, but it also most clearly reflects the opportunities and challenges of an ever-evolving economy. For some, this is a land of warm sunshine, creativity, and big dreams. For others, it is a place where the cost of living, housing prices, and life pressures pose very difficult questions. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that both perspectives contain a part of the truth. What about you? If given the opportunity, would you be willing to move to California for more opportunities, even if it means accepting a more expensive and competitive lifestyle? Or would you choose a more peaceful, low-cost, and stable place? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. I would love to read different perspectives and continue the discussion with everyone. If you enjoy in-depth analysis videos about the economy, society, and untold stories of America, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next videos. Your support is the greatest motivation for the channel to continue providing higher quality content. This video is created with the purpose of sharing information, analysis, and discussion based on public sources, reference data, and various perspectives. The content does not aim to make absolute claims, promote, or criticize any individual, organization, or region. The audience is encouraged to consult multiple sources of information to gain a comprehensive view and form their own evaluations. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.